Almost there.
Okay. It says we're being recorded now.
All right. So good morning, Mickey and Karen and Michale and everyone out there. Turning this mic over to you all to pray us in.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Karen, Mickey, Lynn, everyone who's here. And Karen, would you like to pray us in as we're starting Forgiveness in Jesus, the Meeting Place of A Course in Miracles and Christianity by Kenneth Wapnick, PhD?
Boy, that was a mouthful. I would love to pray us in, and I'm going to pray us in with a little bit from yesterday's lesson, which is forgiveness is the key to happiness, and today's lesson, which is lesson 122, forgiveness offers everything I want. So from lesson 121, forgiveness is the key to happiness. Forgiveness is the key to happiness. I will awaken from the dream that I am a mortal, fallible, and full of sin, and know I am the perfect Son of God. Lesson 122. Forgiveness offers everything I want. What would you want forgiveness cannot give? What gifts but these are worthy to be sought? What fancied value, trivial effect, or transient promise never to be kept can hold more hope than what forgiveness brings? Why would you seek an answer other than the answer that will answer everything? Here is the answer! Exclamation point. Would you stand outside while all of heaven waits for you within? Forgive and be forgiven. As you give, you will receive. There is no plan but this for salvation of the Son of God. Here is the answer! Exclamation point. Do not turn away in aimless wandering again. Accept salvation now. Forgiveness is the means by which it comes to take the place of hell. In quietness, it rises up to greet your open eyes and fill your heart with deep tranquility as ancient truths, forever newly born, arise in your awareness. We hold the key within our hands, accepting heaven's answer to the hell we made, but where we would remain no more. Sink into happiness. Now we walk directly into the light, and we receive the gifts that have been held in store for us since time began, kept waiting for today. Forgiveness offers everything I want. Today, I have accepted this as true. Today, I have received the gifts of God. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Karen. That was beautiful. Such a such a beautiful workbook lesson today. Thank you. So I have the seventh edition. I have us on page 36, and last week we went over special love relationships. We're still in that on chapter 1, the dynamics of the ego, and we went a lot into on the course the two pictures, and Ken said that the special love relationships is out of all the relationships, that's the most intense. It has the most imposing and deceptive frame of all the relationships. So the frame, it's like glittered with diamonds, and you think it's rubies, but it's really drops of blood. So that's the two pictures. So we also went into the little bit of the Jewish mother syndrome last week, and we also went into the psychological principle that dependency breeds contempt, and how that relates to special relationships and that another can be found. So I'll go ahead and start the reading then. It is this impersonal quality that enables the symbols of special hate and special love to alternate with such startling rapidity, as was seen, for example, at the close of World War II. The American ally, the Soviet Union, became the enemy in the Cold War that almost immediately followed, while the enemy, Japan, became a trusted ally, as did West Germany. Enemy soldiers have experienced this dynamic when circumstances suddenly place them together, dropping their role of seeking to destroy each other. Two men may suddenly find that they have more in common than otherwise. They are both afraid, angry, lonely, and resentful, and in their shared situation, they find the enemy has become their brother. When tempted to attack a brother and perceive in him the symbol of your fear, we should remember the gift that is offered us. The Course urges, and we will see him suddenly transformed from enemy to savior, from devil into Christ. And that's from the workbook lesson 161, which is, Give me your blessing, Holy Son of God. I would behold you with the eyes of Christ and see my perfect sinlessness in you. And so this paragraph here that Ken's talking about, where the enemies become friends, and this happened in the Cold War, and where Japan became a trusted ally, as did West Germany. And it also reminds me of a movie that won all sorts of awards. Steven Spielberg put it together. It's called War Horse. And there's a beautiful scene in the movie where the horse gets tangled in barbed wire. And so both sides start calling to the horse, because both sides want the horse. And one of the soldiers puts up a white flag and as surrender, and he goes out to the horse that's caught in the barbed wire. And the other side, another soldier from the enemy side comes over and is telling him how to take how to cut the barbed wire as it won't spring back and cut the horse in the face and hurt it. And the wire cutters become dull. So in the movie, they say we need more wire cutters, and like 25 wire cutters are thrown up in the air in the movie. And so they see that their interests here, they're enemies, and they were on the battlefield against each other. And the horse, because they both wanted the horse, which you could say is the love, brought them together. And they see that their interests are the same. So it's a beautiful scene, and it goes in line with what Ken's talking about here. And also the workbook lesson, Give me your blessing, Holy Son of God. So would anyone like to comment on this paragraph? Karen, I see your hand up. Please go ahead.
Thank you for that, Michale. That was beautiful. I never saw that movie. What do you remember what year that was made? That sounds like maybe an older one.
I don't remember the year, but uh, I think
I'll look.
Amazon Prime has it. You can
Oh, I'll look
rent
it
it
up.
there. Yeah, it's a beautiful, beautiful movie. You'd probably enjoy it.
I love that. I love that example. That is such a great example because you're right. They had the same interest of saving that horse. The love for that horse was the only thing that mattered in that moment, and it didn't matter whether they were enemies or friends. They all came together to save that horse. That's so beautiful. Oh my gosh. I'm definitely going to watch that movie. Also, it reminds me of, how the course, basically the underlying theme is to bring our special relationships into a holy relationship. And he tells us in actually one of Ken's favorite sections where they have come. I think it may have been Helen's favorite, I'm not sure, but she introduced Ken to that section. And I believe it was Choose Once Again, two amazing sections. I think they were the first two sections he read. Correct me if I'm wrong. Um, but For They Have Come talks about basically the special to holy relationship where, an ancient hatred has become a present love. And that is so beautiful how that can happen in the holy instant when we see that we do have the same interests and the horse brought them together, but it can be anything that brings us together. Just seeing that when we really recognize that there really are no differences. They're just old beliefs that we kept hidden, the unconscious guilt. And it really stems from the past, which is what we're going to go into next, the ego's use of the past. It's all the past learning that we think is real. We believe the past is real. We bring it into the present and then we suffer the consequences. So we can let all that go and live in the holy instant. I'm just going to read. It's in chapter 26, section, I think it's section 9 in paragraph 6, for they have come. The holiest of all spots on earth is where an ancient hatred has become a present love. And they, capital T, come quickly to the living temple where a home for them has been set up. There is no place in heaven holier. And they have come to dwell within the temple offered them to be their resting place as well as yours. What hatred has released to love becomes the brightest light in heaven's radiance. And all the lights in heaven brighter grow in gratitude for what has been restored. And this is so beautiful in the transformation of the special to holy. And then also at the end where he's mentioning the gratitude, love and gratitude go hand in hand. You can't have one without the other. And that's what I've been really noticing lately, being more grateful. I know a lot of us talk about gratitude journals. I've done one. I haven't done one in years, but I'm thinking about doing one again. But that gratitude, the full appreciation for my brother, full appreciation for the love or the calls for love is what brings us to that acceptance. So I just wanted to share that. Thanks.
Oh, thank you, Karen. Yeah, it's the gratitude really does, and yeah, gratefulness journal like Helen Schickman had told Tara Singh to keep every day. Gratitude really helps, and Ken in the Death and Dying series, he brings up to be grateful. Also, the gratitude, grateful for when you are able to at, you're able to look at the ego. So you see these things about the ego and be grateful that you're able to see it. So that's also a part of gratitude, and it just kind of you it just keeps moving you up up the ladder, so that gratitude is the way, and forgiveness. And also, like you had said, from the text, chapter 26, which goes with today's lesson 122, is an ancient miracle has come to bless and to replace an ancient enmity that came to kill. And so, again, with the lesson, forgiveness offers everything I want. Today I have accepted this as true. Today I have received the gifts of God. I mean, who wouldn't want the gifts of God? And it's through forgiveness. And also, workbook lesson 161, which is Give Me Your Blessing, Holy Son of God. So, it's not seeing your interests separate from your brother. It's just really beautiful. And Mickey wrote something really nice in the chat. She wrote, yes, those were Ken's first sections to read. And then she wrote, a teacher of God is anyone who chooses to be one. His qualifications consist solely in this: somehow, somewhere, he has made a deliberate choice in which he did not see his interests as apart from someone else's. And that's the Course in Miracles, the manual 1 through 2. And so even on the battlefield there, like we have talked about that movie from Steven Spielberg, War Horse. That was a beautiful scene that Steven Spielberg put together. I don't know if that was, a true scene in the history of life, or that was something that he wrote and put in there. But those two soldiers, well, all the soldiers, they didn't see their interests separate from another. That horse awakened the love within each one of them, and they were there. They all wanted to help the horse get out of that barbed wire. So, yeah, it was really beautiful. So, and thank you for your sharing. So, let's see. I don't see anyone else's hands up. So, I'll go ahead and read the next paragraph then. This sudden shift was seen in an unusual way in the old Brooklyn Dodger baseball fans. For many Brooklynites, the center of their world was the Dodgers, and this special love relationship was intensified by the hatred felt for the rivals across the river, the New York Giants. These feelings ran very deep, so much so that once an argument in a bar over the respective merits of the two teams ended in one man fatally shooting the other. In the 1950s, the Giants had a pitcher, Sal Maglai, who was a particular nemesis to the Dodgers. Not only did he always seem to be at his best against them, but he pitched with a real vengeance. He was nicknamed the Barber because of the close shaves he gave opposing batters when he threw the ball dangerously close to their heads. His name in Brooklyn was Anathema, scarcely close. Imagine the state of disbelief and confusion then when Maglai was traded to the Dodgers. The problem for Dodgers fan was obvious, however, because of the ego's inherent lack of interest in the person. Brooklynites were able to make this shift from hate to love with startling ease. After a few days, it was as if Maglai had always been a Dodger. When later in the pennant race, he pitched a no-hitter, he was practically canonized a Brooklyn Saint. So it's interesting here, Ken brought this up, that here the ego turned it, it has no interest really in the person at all. And yet they traded this hitter. And so it went, the Brooklynites were able to make this shift from hate to love with startling ease. And so that was really interesting that Ken brought this up. So would anyone like to comment on this paragraph here? Karen, please go ahead.
Yeah. It kind of solidifies what he said on the previous page, that the only interest in people is for the ego is how they fulfill the ego's hidden purpose of perpetuating guilt through projection. So the ego, as long as you're doing what I want, that's everything, and the ego is really just wanting to see what it can get. What can it get and how am I going to benefit? Otherwise, I'm going to project my hate onto you. And it doesn't matter who you are, it doesn't matter what team you're on, but if you're doing good for me, then I'm going to do good for you. But that's not really what I wanted to share. What came up for me is, I don't even know why that came up, but it just did. Is what is not love is murder. And it reminds me of that the separate interests that we have here with the special love, intensified by the hatred felt for the rivals. And then there was that fatal shooting that happened because of two team members arguing in a bar over the two teams. And like, this is the hatred, this is the what is not love is murder, and how the hatred, that special hate, can actually turn into physical murder. Um, and there's so much guilt underlying with that. And it just reminded me of a quote that Ken used to share a lot. It reminded me of, it's in chapter 27, section 7. And it really struck me because it's how much we don't want to look at the hate, this hatred, this wanting to kill, you know. So it's chapter 27, section 7, which would be the secret dream, and or the dreamer of the dream. The dreamer of the dream. And so he talks about the secret dream, and then he goes into paragraph 12 and says, a brother separated from yourself, an ancient enemy, a murderer who stalks you in the night and plots your death, yet plans that it be lingering and slow. Of this you dream, yet underneath this dream is yet another in which you become the murderer. That's the secret dream. The secret enemy, the scavenger and the destroyer of your brother and the world alike. Here is the cause of suffering, the space between your little dreams and your reality, the little gap you do not even see, the birthplace of illusions and of fear, the time of terror and of ancient hates, the instant of disaster. All are here. Here is the cause of unreality, and it is here it will be undone. So here is the cause of suffering. And this is really where he talks about what you shared about last week about the carpet of time, how it's all rolled up at once. When it's all rolled up at once, the past, which we're going to get into, is all rolled up at once. And when we forgive, it never happened. And that's the same thing with the tiny mad idea. It is here that it will be undone. And this is Ken, I remember Ken reading this, and he said, this is everyone's dream. This is everyone's dream, he said. And I was like, what? Like, that's not my dream. Like, you must be talking about somebody else. It's not me. Like, I didn't want to look at the hatred that he was really speaking of. And that's what he was saying. This is everyone's dream. And so I thought it was really interesting, and looking at that hate and looking at that guilt. And that brought me into a relationship with a prisoner who I met through listening to it was, I'm trying to think of the teacher's name now. I don't listen to him often. He's a big, popular guy. Lynn would know who he is. And I know him too. I can't think of his name, but anyway, he had a video out and he was reading this David Hoffmeister. David Hoffmeister was reading a letter from this his friend from prison, Dale Crow, who murdered his best friend. And at the end of the video, he said, if anyone, this was around Thanksgiving, he said, if anyone would like to write him, please write him because he would love to hear from people. He's really, a course student. He's working the course. He's doing 20 years for the murder of his best friend, and he would love to hear from course students. So I ended up writing him, and we ended up having this really beautiful relationship. And the reason I was attracted to him was because I was attracted to the guilt. I was attracted to that he murdered his friend and he had the same guilt I had over the suicide of my husband, yet he was healing his mind through forgiveness and I was doing the same thing. We had the same guilt, different form, and we both have been keeping in touch. He's getting out in less than a year now, and we don't call as much. We talk on the phone now more often than we write. But the interesting thing is, in his life, he had three people close to him that also committed suicide. So there was so much healing that occurred through this seemingly negative attraction, you think, but no, it's not. It was that attraction to the guilt that led me to him because I saw he was in prison and he was healing his mind, and my prison was my mind. My mind was in prison, still not healed over this guilt, but being with someone who I saw was actually healing in a literal prison, which is all the same, brought us together to heal, to help each other to heal from the guilt that we believed was real. So sorry that was so long winded, and thank you.
Thank you, Karen. That was really a beautiful sharing and how you brought him up, that he was in the prison. He was dreaming that dream, but you were also saying that you were sharing that your mind was in the prison. So you were sharing the same thing. So, and you saw it together. So that was a beautiful sharing. Thank you so much. And I see Mickey's hand is up. So please go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, that was amazing, Karen. What an incredible story. And wouldn't it be great if he could join us on Zoom after he gets out? And we could get to meet him too. That would be awesome. So I wanted to go back to this sports analogy that Ken was talking about in the book, which I think is great. I just love he was such a big baseball fan, and it's fun to see these sports things come up. I am just a sports dabbler. I am not a big fan, but I do like watching every once in a while. And another example of how special relationships can turn from special love to special hate so quickly is when you have a sports team that you're a big fan of, and you also have this rival team, and they beat you in the playoffs or something, and then there's this other team that you don't really like, but if they're playing the team that kicked you out of the playoffs, all of a sudden you're rooting for this team that you didn't like before. But it's that age old, it's like the age old saying of the enemy of my enemy is my friend. And boy, does that get complicated in the special love and special hate. But it can switch on a dime. Some team you really didn't like, but they're out there getting your rival who got you kicked out of the playoffs, and you're rooting for them like a maniac. It's hysterical. And our hate can turn to love in a second in a situation like that. And it's such a clear example of how fickle special love can be. So I love Ken and his sports analogies. They make it so clear. Thanks.
Thank you, Mickey, for your sharing, and thank you, Karen. Yeah, it's that. I mean, his fortunate analogies for in the bar. I mean, they didn't even know each other. And they ended up arguing, and then they one shot the other, and they murdered each other just over sports. I mean, yeah, an ancient. Uh, it turns to hate. So, okay, so I don't see any more hands up, so I'll go ahead and read the next couple paragraphs, which will bring us to the end of special love relationships. And then we're going to go into the past. We can summarize the meaning of the special relationship in considering a glass jar about 1/4 filled with instant coffee granules. The jar represents our self concept or how the ego views us, while the coffee symbolizes our guilt, which the ego has convinced us is our fundamental reality. The ego teaches us to avoid this guilt at all costs. Otherwise, we would be overwhelmed and destroyed. Thus, we deny or repress our self hatred, pushing the coffee to the jar's bottom, which represents our unconscious. Once we have accepted the ego's ideas as true, we are committed to keeping our guilt denied and at the bottom of the jar. What maintains the success of our denial is a secure lid, which now becomes the function of our special relationships. As long as we are in specialness, the guilt we project onto others is safely buried in our minds. The special partners, whether hate or love, remain our lid as long as they play the game of guilt. When they do not, the lid on our jar begins to unscrew. The guilt rises in our awareness, and we panic as the ego has taught us to. Still, within the ego system, we have no recourse but to have the lid be screwed on tight once again, manipulating the special partner through guilt. If this fails, we must throw the lid away, finding another who can now fulfill that function for us. And so, I love Ken's analogy on the instant coffee. And, this is what happens in a lot of relationships, and divorce takes place, and then they find another. So, would anyone like to comment on this section before we go to the ego's use of the past? I see Karen, your hand's up. Please go ahead.
Yeah, it's definitely related to divorce and even just any real relationships, but divorce is definitely a big one. Um, so I like where he says, let me see, um, I'm on the right page here. I'm sorry. Okay. The ego teaches us to avoid this guilt at all costs. Otherwise, we would be overwhelmed and destroyed. So, this is really where the the ego really doesn't want to look. And he really talks about that. This is a big theme throughout the course. And one of the places that really hits home for me is in the Fear to Look Within, chapter 21, section 4, where he says, Loudly, the ego tells you not to look inward, for if you do, your eyes will light on sin and God will strike you blind. This you believe, so you do not look. Yet this is not the ego's hidden fear, nor yours who serve it. Loudly, indeed, the ego claims it is, too loudly and too often. For underneath this constant shout and frantic proclamation, the ego is not certain it is so. Beneath your fear to look within, Beneath your fear to look within because of sin is yet another fear, and one which makes the ego tremble. So I think it's so interesting how, the ego really tries so hard to have us not look within because we believe that God will strike us blind, that we will be punished, that if we look within, that we will suffer. And that's not the truth. The what makes the ego tremble is knowing that if we recognize that we have that power of decision, that if we change our mind and we look, and we actually look with the Holy Spirit, this is where the miracle happens. We learn to look at it and we don't judge it, and then we can forgive it. That is forgiveness, actually. That is forgiveness. So the ego does not want us to look, and it wants us to avoid guilt. So we become and stay mindless. So we never change our mind and stay in that guilt attack cycle. So I think it's really taught me not only to look, but to ask more. That's what I've been doing more, is asking more, because there was a time when I I believed those ego lies, and I didn't know how to ask because I actually believed what I thought was true. I believed it. So it's just beautiful that we don't have to believe any of it and we can see things differently. Thanks.
Thank you, Karen. And I love how you brought up the looking, and that's what Ken is talking about here, how he's kind of baby stepping us into that. And he's talking about the instant coffee, the coffee granules. So they're at the bottom of the jar, and that's the guilt, and it's the guilt that's buried, that's hidden, and we don't want to look at it. We have to look at it, and the fear is so great that that's where um, you have to, like you were saying, you have to ask for the Holy Spirit and Jesus to help you to look at it without judgment. And, and he also brings up here about that, finding another, that if that, if the guilt rises in our awareness, which is the instant coffee, then the ego panics. That's what the ego has taught us. And so then the ego has no recourse, he says, but to have the lid screwed on tight once again. So the ego is very manipulative. So it manipulates the partner through guilt. And if it fails, then Ken says we must throw the lid away, finding another who can now fulfill that function for us. So it's constantly, it's you know, it's failing to look within. It doesn't want to look. And so that's the beauty of this, what Ken brought up. It's about the looking, and that's what you brought up too, which is so beautiful. So would anyone else like to comment on this before we go on to the ego's use of the past? No? Okay, then I'll go ahead and start the next paragraph. The ego's use of the past. The ego attempts to justify its projections in special relationships by distorting perception, seeing people only in terms of the past and making them into what it wants them to be. Our experience, to the contrary, perception, is a relative phenomenon. It does not reflect a constant or absolute picture of the world around us, the seeming facts of the material universe, but rather Perception is an interpretation of the world in which we live, which becomes, in effect, an unreal world. Thus, the Course states, quote, perception always involves some misuse of mind because it brings the mind into areas of uncertainty, end quote. And that's from the text, chapter 3, 4, 5 through 1, which is the innocent perception, and it's under error and the ego. And so I'll go into the next chapter because it also goes in line with this. Psychologists have demonstrated how our perceptions are distorted and limited by the very structure of our sensory apparatus. Dogs, for example, can hear sounds that remain inaudible to us. Our sense of smell is not nearly as developed as in other animals that must rely on this sense for survival. In vision, parallel lines will seem to meet at some distant point, as do the sea and sky at the horizon. The basic principles of geometry notwithstanding, and we all learn very early in our lives to correct for the literally upside down image of the external world that is cast upon our retinas. More important for our purposes, however, are the psychological distortions we introduce into our perceptions. In this area, Freud was the first to show systematically that the world we experience is not the way it seems, that our perceptions and theoretical understanding of reality are affected and even drastically distorted by unresolved problems that are not even within our awareness. These hidden complexes are projected onto the world, acting as a filter through which we see. Thus, our perceptions often can reflect our unconscious needs and fears. So, let's see, he gives an example in the next paragraph. So it probably would be good to just read the next paragraph, which is very short. So, for example, people lost in a desert may, out of their need for water, imagine they see an oasis and may even think they hear the sound of running water. A frightened child in the dark may see ghosts or dragons attacking them. Finally, the presence of intense guilt may actually induce suffering to believe that whispering voices are speaking about that, or that someone walking behind them is spying. So, so I'd like to stop here. So, I like how he brought up that Freud was the first to show that the world we experience is not the way that it seems, that our perceptions and theoretically understanding of reality are affected and even drastically distorted by unresolved problems that are not even within our awareness. So this goes along with our guilt that's hidden, that the ego wants to remain hidden, and that how distorted our perceptions are. And that's why we really need a helper, a teacher, the Holy Spirit, Jesus, to help us to look, because the fear is so great because our perceptions are so distorted. And then I love how Ken brings up about, the retina and how, it's reversed, and how, about animals, and so how, they have their interpretation of the world and is different and they rely on that for their survival. So would anyone like to comment on this. I see Lynn's hand is up, so please go ahead, Lynn.
Thank you so much, Michaela. And yeah, this is amazing. Let me fix it so they can hear me on Pal Talk. All right. So yeah, basically he's saying that you see what you want to see and you hear what you want to hear. It doesn't mean that you're consciously saying, this is what I want to see or hear, but it comes to you because of these preconceived notions that we have. So we have all these preconceived notions about the roles that people play in the world, about their abilities or disabilities. We all know about the dumb blondes and the dumb Polacks. I mean, think about it. I mean, we have these perceptions that are already instilled in us through our culture and through our family relationships and even just personal preferences that we come to for some other reason. But believe me, there is no real reason, and I just want to emphasize this, there is no real reason to see differences in each other. There is nothing that another person is presenting that is a reality. Those are all perceptions. Their perception of the world, my perception of the world, their perception of what's good, my perception of what's good, they're all different because these are things that are developed through putting together different pictures in our minds. And so that's why none of the world that I see is actually real at all. It is just an interpretation in my mind of I think I'm seeing. So I think I see a house, and my mind goes into the color of the house, the size of the house, the age of the house, the condition of the house, you know, who lives in the house. I have all of these stories in my mind about a house. And so, then when someone says to me, oh, someone was murdered in that house, oh, suddenly my whole perception shifts because the idea of someone having been murdered there, throws me into a psychological and emotional uh, trauma of some sort. And now my perception of the house changes. And I'm seeing something different when I look at the house. First I'm looking, man, I want to buy that house and move into it. Next, I'm like, excuse me, I don't want to live in a house where someone, some woman was murdered. That I would be thinking about that all the time. I'd probably be seeing her ghost. I'd probably be, this is how our minds are so easily manipulated by the world and the stories that we tell ourselves and that other people tell us. And with television and movies and I mean, it used to just be, stories that people told around the campfire. Now we're just bombarded with all of these different points of view that are really trying to. Uh, I say trying to. That's my perception. I don't know. Trying to shift our perception. So that we want to have a drink a light beer, or I want I want to eat a steak, or I want to, go to Hawaii, or, all these different things. These are not things that come to us just because, I'm looking at pictures of Hawaii and saying, oh, that looks like a great place. Because I'm telling you, there's, Indonesia is a great place. Russia is a great place. Every place is great when you look at it through clear eyes. But when you look at it through these eyes of perception that have been really influenced by the world, by other people, by our parents, by religion, all these different influences make the world that I see. And that's why the whole thing of, the I'm responsible for the world I see. I am responsible for looking at that world and asking the question, what of this is real? And when I recognize that none of it's real, it's all a story that I've told myself. There may be a house there, but it is a different house to different people. It's the house I grew up in. It's the house my friend was murdered in. These are the things that influence us. So why I'm going on about this is because this whole idea of perception is the key to letting go of the grievances and the fears that it seems to be natural, but really it's not. It's based on these stories. And when you go back through the story, you will find out that nothing really happened. Nothing really happened. When you get back to the original story of the tiny mad idea, we recognize that it's all made up. None of it's real. So the only basis I have to deny my love to my brother. I was going to mention yesterday's lesson, the same thing that we were just talking about, looking at a person that we have a grievance against and seeing the light fill them and shifting that to now looking at someone that we really love and seeing the light and recognizing that it's the same thing and they're the same. That's all this is wanting to this course is about, is getting rid of that perception, those perceptions, and looking for actual knowledge. What is really here? Anyway, sorry I rambled on, but thank you for listening, and I'll turn it over to Karen.
Thank you. Please, that was wonderful sharing, Lynn. Thank you so much. Karen, please go ahead.
Thank you, Lynn. Exactly. It's these conditioned beliefs, and it's all perception. And that is why we ask the Holy Spirit, this is a story I made up. Please help me see this differently because I'm really believing it right now. And in chapter 25, section 3, in perception and choice, the perception's fundamental law, he tells us, it's a fundamental law that you see what you believe is there, and you believe it there because you want it there. Perception has no other law than this. So that's just supporting what Lynn just said. But what I wanted to share, this is deep. I love getting into this with Ken because Ken has taught me so much about, the ego's use of the past and how to really let go and look at how it's really affecting me. So the ego's use of the past, first of all, the past is sin because linear time, with Ken's teaching, linear time is sin, guilt, and fear. Sin is the past. It's a past sin, something I did in the past. And guilt is the present. I'm feeling guilty for this sin in the past, either something you did to me or something I did to you. Okay. In form, that's what we're thinking in linear time. And then fear is the future, fear of punishment in the future, that I'm going to punish you, or you're going to punish me, or I'm going to be punished. So that's the first thing that came to my mind with this, because the ego attempts to justify its projections in special relationships by distorting perception, seeing people only in terms of the past and making them into what it wants them to be. So I'm still seeing you from the past and I'm holding you to it and I'm making you feel guilty for it now. So but the thing is, the correction, which we're learning here, is that sin is, first of all, sin is not real. It's just this other belief that we made up, and the belief in it makes it real. It calls for correction, and that's where the correction comes in. And so the perception is an interpretation, as Lynn was saying. It's an interpretation, not a fact. The interpretation will always hurt us because it's never true. It's what we're believing that's not real. And it can lead to suicide. It led to my husband's suicide. It can lead to depression. It led to my depression. It can lead to really, that's why he says delay can be tragic in time, because it's tragic here to believe these thoughts that are not our real thoughts. So what comes to me also is in lesson 193, which I love, which is everybody loves this lesson. All things are lessons God would have me learn. And he tells us that this is the lesson God would have you learn. There is a way to look on everything that lets it be to you another step to him, capital H, and to look and to salvation of the world. To all that speaks of terror, answer thus: I will forgive, and this will disappear. To every apprehension, every care, and every form of suffering. Repeat these self same words, and then you hold the key. Forgiveness is the key to happiness that opens heaven's gate and brings the love of God the Father down to earth at last to raise it up to heaven. God will take this final step himself. Do not deny the little steps he asks you to take to him. So the reason I brought this up is because what he's saying here is, I will forgive and this will disappear. What disappears is that interpretation. I'm forgiving my interpretation. It has nothing to do. It's an outside picture, which we share a lot, of an inward condition. Projection makes perception. So these little steps he's asking, don't deny these little steps, these little, for me, it's the moment to moment practices of forgiveness. This is a moment to moment practice that we're forgiving our interpretations and recognizing that the past is just a thought we're having. So I could go on and on, but I don't want to take up too much time because we're getting towards the end. But I'm very passionate about this section and about the past because that held me in hell for many, many years. I was a prisoner of this world for many, many years until I was able to forgive. So I'm just so, so grateful. Thank you.
Thank you for your sharing, Karen. That was really beautiful and nice. And it also goes in with the early workbook lessons. So like where it talks about, like looking at a table or a cup and giving it all the meaning. So it that brings in the past that he's in the workbook lessons. It's a form of mind training. So it's starting to have you look at how you're looking at something. And I like how you brought up, the past is always involved with linear time, and sin, guilt, and fear are all of the past. And so can we really look without judgment, just to be in the present moment without any judgment and bring no past to it? That's beautiful, you're sharing. Thank you so much. I think this is a good place to end it because we only have about 1 minute here. So I think we'll end it here for this week. And then would anyone else like to comment before I end it with a poem from Helen Schuckman? I see Karen, your hand's up, so please go ahead.
Yeah, I like that you mentioned the cup because that's in the next paragraph that we'll start next week on the experience of a cup as we don't know what it's for. And I wanted to welcome Roger. I've never met Roger before. It's his first time here. Welcome, Roger.
Thank you, Karen. I I listened in some yesterday and talked to Lynn about. I'm wanting. I've been listening to ACIM gather for a while, and just been listening to it on the radio. I am one that just likes to listen and lets everybody else tell me what I need to do. I'd rather just listen instead of participate. But every now and then I like to participate. But I love the group. I love the participation and everybody. I live in Chattanooga, Tennessee. I'm down here in the South, but I'm glad to be aboard, and I hope to keep going with this as long as possible. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing, and we're happy you're here.
Thank you. Nice to meet you, Roger.
Thank you.
I'm going to end it with My Father's House. It's a poem in Helen Schuckman's book, The Gifts of God, and it's on page 59. My Father's House, hallowed my name. I am a son of God who walks in stillness. I hold out my hand, and from my fingertips the quiet goes around the world to still all living things and cover them in holiness. Their rest is joined in mine, for I am one with them. There is no pain my stillness cannot heal, because it comes from God. There is no grief that does not turn to laughter when I come. I do not come alone. There walks with me the light that heaven looks on as itself. I am a son of God. My name is His. My Father's house is where my stillness is. The Gifts of God, Helen Shipman. Thank you.
Thank you so much.